Are you holding back from starting your business because you're afraid of getting sued? We live in such a litigious society today that being sued is something that could happen. But fear not, Brooke is going to put on her attorney hat and help walk us through what you can do to protect yourself so that you can grow your dream. Stay tuned and get ready to grow that business. Hey, lady bosses, are you working even after putting the kids to bed but still not getting results?
Are you tired of spending money on ads that aren't getting engagement?
Do you feel burdened that you aren't fulfilling your purpose in life because you are so consumed with work?
I'm your host, Brooke Boltz. I'm an attorney and founder of Boltz Legal. I started my business and in 1 year was bringing in 7 figures and am now bringing in multi-7 figures.
And I'm your co-host, Rachel Boltz, owner of Boltz Media. I've helped many businesses build their online presence and increase their revenue through digital marketing.
Want to hear how we did it?
We are here to help you achieve your goals personally, professionally, and spiritually.
So kick off your high heels, sit back, and let's ignite that passion.
We're Miss Biz, where we're putting the Miss in biz.
Let's get biz done. Each Friday, Rachel and I host a Zoom call called Miss Biz Connects, where our listeners call in and we talk through the episode of the week and apply it to our businesses. And so one week on a Miss Biz Connects call, one of our faithful listeners and favorite people said that she had been holding back in her business because she was afraid of being sued. More specifically, she creates skincare products and they're tremendous. They have all kinds of really great things for your body in them. She really does a lot of research into creating these products that are much better for your skin and your health than the things you can buy over the counter. So she has these great products, and so Rachel and I, of course, are doing what we do and telling her all the ways that she can get that product promoted and get more sales. And her first thought when we started giving her these ideas was, oh, I can't do that. I don't want it to get out to more people because if something happens, they may sue me. And so that really opened my eyes to the fears that I think a lot of business owners have around doing certain things, selling certain products, or maybe even having visitors on your premises for a community event, that they have this fear of being sued that holds them back from ideas they otherwise would want to pursue.
Yeah, and I mean, there's not just fears of something going wrong with your product. There's all kinds of fears in terms of advertising. I know when I started out my business, I was really afraid of messing up my books and getting in trouble with the IRS until I realized that I could just pay people to help me. So there are all types of fears when starting your business.
I had that same fear as well. I'm not a budget numbers kind of person. And I also had a fear of the Florida bar because I, in law school, had heard all these stories of what you can and can't do in your advertising. And so I was so afraid to do any advertising for fear I was going to violate a bar rule and lose my license. And so over the course of time, though, I submitted a number of my proposed advertisements to the bar. I got their feedback. I realized they weren't so scary and that they were really just trying to help me and that the rules were really not all that difficult or challenging and I could navigate within them. And so I want to do this podcast today to just alleviate some of your fears if this is you, if you're being held back because of your fear of being sued. because I'm a lawyer who sues people. So I can hopefully give you an insider's view of what goes on when we're deciding whether to take a case. Now, going back to the case of the skincare products, we as lawyers take on cases where there is a substantial possibility of recovering a substantial amount of money. And in a skincare product type case, that's a products liability case specifically, and it's expensive. In order to prove a case like that, let's say, for example, someone uses a skincare product and they break out in a rash, right? That would be a reasonable thing that could happen if you use a skincare product and it doesn't do well with your skin type. So what I'd have to do as a lawyer to take on that case is hire engineers and skincare experts and all kinds of experts up front to investigate that product and try to figure out what went wrong, and then get an opinion, a report from those experts to then justify filing a lawsuit against the product manufacturer.
And doesn't there have to be permanent injury when it comes to any type of personal injury?
So, great question. It doesn't have to be a permanent injury. In an auto accident case, in order to recover certain types of monetary damages, you have to have a permanent injury. But in a case like this, which would be considered products liability case where a product is defective or doesn't operate in the way it was intended to, you don't have to prove permanent injury. But without a permanent injury, there's not going to be enough monetary value to the case to justify the expenses that are going to be required to prevail in that case.
Right, because hiring an engineer and all the different teams to just figure out ingredients and reactions to, with regards to a skincare product, is not going to be worth damages of $1,000.
Right, a rash is not going to be a serious enough injury to justify the expense of all the experts and engineers that would need to be involved. So if someone called into my office with that case, it would be one I would politely decline to take on, and I am fairly confident all the attorneys I know would decline to take on that case. The injury isn't severe enough to justify the time and expense it takes to file that lawsuit. So it's something to keep in mind when you're looking at, I'm afraid of being sued. Okay, well, what's the worst that could happen? I suppose in a skincare case, you could have something more severe than a rash. You could have a breakout that was more serious.
Blistering of the skin.
Yes, but it would really need to rise to the level of having permanent scarring. It would need to be permanent scarring, or there would need to be such severe, say, burning that they needed to do skin grafts or do surgery of some sort. It would need to be really serious, a serious injury with serious medical treatment that was required. Another case or another example was someone called into my office recently who had put some type of microwavable food into the microwave, and when actually it wasn't the microwave, it was on the stovetop, put this food onto the stovetop, and within a few seconds it exploded.
Oh, snap.
And the grease from the pan burned their skin.
Aww.
And so they had splashes of burns all over their body. But when I looked at the pictures of the burns, they looked very surface level and like they would heal without scarring within probably a couple of weeks.
Right.
And so I said to that person, let's see what happens over the next couple of weeks, see if it heals up. If you have any permanent scarring, call me back and let me know and send me the pictures. Chances are, though, it's going to heal up just fine. And even though explosion of food item
Crazy.
is definitely, there's a possibility of negligence for sure, there would be so many experts needed to look into what happened and whether it had anything to do with what temperatures were being used or what oil products were being used or whatever. There would be a lot of science involved in getting to the bottom of what happened there, which would be very expensive. And if these are burns that go away, it's the cost doesn't justify the nature of the injury. Do you love the Miss Biz podcast?
Because we love you.
Here's 3 things you can do to show your support.
1, write us a review. Apple or Spotify are the best platforms for reviews.
2, join us for our free Friday Zoom calls at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. To RSVP, go to missbiz.com homepage, scroll down to Miss Biz Connects and click the link.
3, follow us on social media. Our handle is at Miss Biz Podcast.
As always, thank you for your support. So these are things to think about in the skincare product example. How realistic is it that your product's going to hurt someone in a permanent way?
Not very realistic, especially if your ingredients are mostly natural.
Right, which hers are. And in the cases where it could cause something more severe, it's probably going to be because of an allergy, would be my best guess. And so you put warnings on the label that says, and you make sure you have the ingredients there, and so people can look and review and see if there's anything there that they have an allergy to. And as long as you're notifying them, you can't predict every allergy everyone may have who would use your product, but you can just put those things on the label.
Yeah, and I think that's why a lot of companies will put like warnings on like common misused ways that the product is used. I know I had ordered some pre-workout the other day, and there were so many different fun warnings on there. It was like, warning, do not snort. And I'm like, who would want to snort like pre-workout? My goodness, it sounds horrible. But there were a couple different things on there. So that is another method that you can use as a business owner to protect yourself. There's all kinds of, I actually did a paper on this in my business law class. It was about products liability. And like, if you look at it, everyday different things that you use, you'll see those warnings on there.
Right.
And there was one on my hair iron, and it was like, warning, do not use on eyelashes. And I'm like, you mean to tell me that some idiot tried to straighten their eyelashes with a hair iron? So, I mean, that's something that you can do to protect yourself. We should do an episode like that. Yeah. With all the warnings.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And someone has said before that every warning arises from a lawsuit somewhere.
Yes, I believe it.
But the reasonable person standard and foreseeability tests are what the law looks at least in Florida, where I am. And so when going back to your straightening your eyelashes, the question that would be asked in the courtroom of the jury is, was it reasonably foreseeable that someone would take this, is it curling iron?
No,
or a straightener?
It was a straightener.
Is it reasonably foreseeable that someone would take a straightener and try to straighten their eyelashes? And if the answer is yes, I could foresee that happening, then a warning is necessary. If it's not reasonably foreseeable and you're like, no way I would ever think that could ever happen, then it's probably warning is probably not necessary, but we probably have a warning anyways just to be safe, because if it happened once, we're going to warn against it to protect against anything happening like that in the future.
I'll have to see if I can find a picture of it, because it had like a little stick figure guy with the thing near his eyeball, and then it had like the circle and then the X through it, or the half X through it. So,
well, and that's the other thing. It now becomes foreseeable, because if it's happened once, now you can't say in the future it wasn't foreseeable that someone would put this on their eyelashes, because it happened and you were sued for it. So now you know it's a possibility, and so now you have to put a warning. So those first time events, things you don't always expect, they're going to happen sometimes. And that's why we have insurance. Having liability insurance is really important for your business for those things that you don't expect. And so you want to make sure you're having that type of coverage to protect yourself, because at the end of the day, it is pretty easy to be sued. It's not always justified, but having that insurance can give you the peace of mind that if it does happen, despite your best efforts, you are protected and your assets are protected from being attacked directly. So skin rash, cuts, surface level cuts, scrapes, bruises, these are not going to be enough for most lawyers to be willing to take on a case. It's going to have to be something more serious than that, and something, like you said, that is permanent, has at least permanent scarring or permanent ongoing issues. So the next category of products that sometimes cause lawsuits are things that are inherently dangerous. An example of this would be a chainsaw. Chainsaw is inherently dangerous. You can injure yourself just by using the chainsaw. And so that's why you need to have instruction manuals and warnings and big bold letters on those type of products, because there's user error that can cause people to have injuries, and you need to anticipate things that are foreseeable and then make sure you're giving clear instructions and big bold warnings so that those lawsuits don't find their way against you and are just chalked up to being user error. Let's talk about slip and falls a little bit, because I think these are pretty common and things that a lot of business owners may face at some point, especially if their premises is open to the public. So one thing to know, and this is for Florida, that if you slip and fall on what we call a transitory foreign substance, which is something that's on the floor that could be cleaned up, then we have to prove, as the party who's injured has to prove, not only that they slipped and fell on something on the floor on your premises, but that it was there for a long enough period of time that the landowner knew or should have known that it was there and cleaned it up. So I like to tell the banana peel test, which is what I learned in law school, which is if you slip and fall on a banana peel that's bright yellow and fresh, then that probably hasn't been there that long. And
Right.
So it's probably not going to be evidence of negligence. But if you fall on a banana peel that is black and dirty, then that is evidence that it could have been there
Yes.
long enough for the landowner to know of it and clean it up. So the banana peel test is an example of how you could prove something was there for a long enough period of time to clean it up, even though you don't know exactly how long it was there. So this is why I tell people taking a picture isn't enough if you are the injured party, because if I just see a pile of water, that doesn't tell me how long it was there. I've got to do more than that to be able to show it was there long enough for someone to have known about it.
So how do you find out how long it was there?
Most of the time, you cannot find out. The only way you can know for sure is if there's surveillance video. That leads me to another point. If there is surveillance video, a lot of surveillance cameras record over itself. And so if you don't extract the video sometimes it's within a few hours, or sometimes within 24 hours or a couple of days, if you don't get that video of the fall and the time leading up to it, if you don't pull that out, it's gone forever. And so reporting the injury, getting the video really quickly is important. So to protect yourself in slip and falls, the best way to do that is to make a log of how often each area was checked. And if you've ever been in a public restroom, you probably see these hanging on the door. It's the chart where the employees sign off that they checked the bathroom and the time they checked it. And this is really the best thing you can do, is have a policy where your entire premises is checked, I'd say probably every 30 minutes to be safe. And the staff member who does it signs off that they did it. And also they need to be trained on all the things to do to make sure they're doing a thorough inspection every 30 minutes. Now, that's assuming you have a business where you have a continuous flow of traffic of the public. If it's somewhere that is just office staff working and not, you're only having a client here or there, you probably don't need to do it that regularly. If you've got people coming in and coming out on a regular basis, or if you're hosting a community event where you're going to have a lot of people in that day, then the log is the best way to show that you have been continuously monitoring and checking the area. You don't want to be whack. Cuckoo. We will cut you some slack.
We got you.
You just want to make a big stack.
Ballin'.
Listen to our biz hack.
Who loves standing in line at theme parks?
Not me.
Me either. Luckily, today's biz hack is going to help you be able to skip the line and get straight to the ride. So, when you're with your girlfriends or adult children, instead of waiting in the regular line, go to the single rider line. You will save half the time. So, I know that they have wet floor signs that are used whenever you have some type of incident where maybe there's leakage from the roof, or there's, I don't know, water that came in from the outside. So how do those wet floor signs protect you?
So the wet floor signs are good because what the law says is that you're responsible to protect the public from latent defects, latent dangerous conditions, so things that they can't see or know that are there. And when you put the wet floor sign there, now the person coming into the facility has the same level of knowledge that you have, so you're on equal footing. So they now have the opportunity to know it's wet, it's no longer latent or hidden. And so they now have to take precaution for their own safety because they've been warned that the floor is wet. So the wet floor signs are good. You want to make sure you have them in the area that all of the water is. If you have a 20-foot wet area, it's not going to be enough to just have one wet floor sign in the far corner. You're going to need to have a few different signs covering the whole area that's wet, and you also need to be proactively cleaning it up promptly. You can't just put the wet floor sign and let it stay soaking wet for 8 hours. You need to also be doing your best to keep it safe.
I always thought it was weird. When I used to work at the school for the blind and visually impaired, we'd have these wet floor signs, but like our students couldn't see them. So I was like, why don't they make like, I think they make some that have like Braille on them.
Yeah, but how would they even know there's a sign there?
I was like, they need to have like some little sign that like chirps or does like some type of low frequency thing that isn't obnoxious so people would know.
Yeah, or even just says wet floor, you know, something to give them a warning. That's a good point that I never considered, but very good point that not everyone will see it, and that's definitely.
Let's go make a wet floor sign, Brooke.
Yeah, new business idea.
Yeah.
So when it comes to trip and falls, which is another common type of lawsuit, you need to check your premises to make sure what the changes of elevation are, meaning changes between each slab of a sidewalk, for example. And in Florida, the law is if you have an elevation of over 1/2 inch, then that could be a violation of the building code. So you want to look for those things. If you find them, you want to bevel the edges to make it rounded versus a flat edge, and you want to try to even it out as best you can. Sometimes you can't make it perfect, but it needs to be less than a half an inch, any change in elevation. And also, I recommend that you take some bright color paint and paint it along the area where there is the elevation change so that it draws attention to that. Just like with the wet floor sign, right. It's a warning that there's a change in elevation right here. Pay attention and don't slip or trip here.
I wonder how people in Colorado feel about this, the higher elevation, or if they have like a very similar rule to this, because I think when I think of elevation, I think of like mountains and things like that.
So what I mean by change in elevation is when
you're talking about the building, right? When they're
No, I'm talking about a sidewalk. So if you're walking on a sidewalk and then there is an elevated lip on, the sidewalk has concrete slabs, little concrete slabs. They're just a bunch of little, and so between them there's a little crack.
Oh, I trip over those things all the time.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That if one of them is higher than if you're walking on one that's low and then you come up to one that's higher, it's easy for someone's toe or the front of their shoe to catch that elevated slab and fall forward.
I mean, we're all kind of accident prone sometimes.
Well, that's what I said.
I do know that some of it is like way too much, but
it depends on how big of a lip that change in elevation is. If it's more than a half an inch and it's not beveled, then it can be a violation of the building code. So that's what you want to look for. And again, this is Florida only. I'm not aware of all the other states. So you want to walk around the sidewalks, walk around the parking lot, look for things that are tripping hazards where one slab is higher than the other.
I still feel like mountain states are like, you're on your own. Like, they're only saying that about us because we're the flat land.
Yeah, there probably is when you have higher elevations and hills and things like that, more potential tripping hazards.
Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Meet our expert team at Miss Biz.
Whether you need help with business strategy, brand development, or digital marketing, we have a personalized one-on-one coaching program just for you.
And if you're looking for something more budget-friendly, our group coaching services offer incredible value and the chance to learn alongside like-minded entrepreneurs.
Transform your business today. Visit missbiz.com and start your journey to success. So, and then the last area of the types of lawsuits to be on guard or proactive about are, of course, car accidents. And if you have a business where you have cars on the road, employees driving around, then there's a few things you can do to be aware of potential hazards. So do a driver history check on everyone who's going to be driving for the business. Do a background check as well. And there's a couple of apps. One's called Fleet Tracker and another one's called One Step GPS, where you can get tracking and text and email alerts about any unsafe driving behavior of any of your employees. So that's going to allow you to take action early before that person causes a potential accident. Because in Florida, an employer is responsible for the negligence of its employee. So you want to be sure that your drivers are driving safely.
Yes, and I know when I used to work as a teacher, they would check everybody's background once or twice a year, to make sure that your license was still good and see like, okay, have they gotten any tickets, have they gotten into any trouble, or are they still considered a safe driver?
Right. And that's a good practice to have, as well as random drug tests and things like that as well, especially if you have people on the road driving, because if you do get sued, these are the kinds of questions you're going to be asked. Did you check this only once 10 years ago? Or have you checked on an ongoing basis to make sure that the people you have on the roads are safe drivers? So
Yeah, make them pee on a stick.
yeah. Yes. So these are things you can do to try to safeguard and be proactive to protect yourself against lawsuits. But again, sometimes things are just going to happen despite your best efforts. And that's why we have liability insurance. So do those things, get the insurance, but then live your life. Like you cannot hold back out of fear and not attempt to reach your maximum potential in your business because you're afraid of being sued. Listen to these things, do the best you can to protect yourself, have the insurance, and then if it happens,
Give it to God.
amen.
Lamentations chapter 3, verses 22 through 23. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. We appreciate you and are honored to be on this journey with you. We can't wait to help you, to encourage you, and show you how to grow personally, professionally, and spiritually.
If you found Miss Biz helpful, please leave a review and share with others.
You can follow us on social media at Miss Biz Podcast.
For legal questions or services, please visit boltzlegal.com.
And for digital marketing needs, please visit boltzmedia.com. Let's get biz done.